technical difficulty. What's going on, people? My name is Gaeta. I'm really glad to be here on this Friday morning. Today, it's going to be a heavy talk, a really interesting conversation. Um, um, so, we're going to unpack a lot of things. We got election results. And I'm not gonna waste my time. Today's conversation, our title is Donald Trump won. What's next? And like I said earlier, my name is Gaetan with Friends of the Congo organizer, and I'm joined by my dear friend and guest, Axcana Rios, graduate uh, for Portland State University, Bachelor in Global Supply Chain. Uh, and Axcana, you do have experience in supply chain, and uh, you have work experience in both the private and public procurement, and you are passionate about government relation, and that's actually how you and I met at Portland Community College in student government way back in 2014, I believe. And you're also passionate about lobbying and community activism and economic uh, justice. How are you doing, Oksana?
I'm glad to be here, Gate, and thank you for having me once again in this lovely podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, today, guys, we're gonna dive deep with my guest into the results of the recent U.S. presidential election, where former President Donald Trump has returned to office, and he will be sworn in January. And we'll be analyzing what this means for both the U.S. and the broader global landscape, what it means for activism in America, and yeah. So, Oksana, really, first question, right? We're gonna start to break down some of the voting trends as we saw in the election. So Trump's victory really shaped, uh, I would say, it was shaped by a shift in key demographics, and I'm gonna give like a breakdown. And you and I, we had a long conversation last night, and it will be really interesting to actually do that live again with our viewer, our audience. So really quick, when we talk about gender, it's really interesting to break down those votes. We have among women Vice President Kamala Harris. She led with 54%, while Trump took 44%. So, however, Trump saw a significant support from male voters, where he led with 55%. And in terms of race and ethnicity, Trump was able to maintain really strong support from white voters with 55%. But he also made notable like inroads with Hispanic voters, which to me was really interesting, right? And that's why you're here to kind of like help us understand what happened. And he captured 45% of among Latinos or Latinx voters, and a remarkable 13-point increase from 2020, right? So in terms of age, younger voters age between 18 and 29, they lean toward Harris at 55%, but Trump gained ground here as well with 6 point increase among this group compared to 2020. And I've been posting all along on my Instagram stories about like some of the trends. So it was really interesting. In terms of education, those without college degree leaned heavily toward Trump with 55%, no surprise, while college educated voters prefer Harris at 57%. So really these numbers reveal interesting shift, particularly with this increase support for Donald Trump among Hispanic voters and those without college degrees. So the focus on the economy seems, I think, to have a crucial role here. So, Axkana, first question, right, with everything that I just told you, like, one, I want to really know what was your impression or what did you think about these elections? That's literally my first question to you.
Wow, not holding back there, Gaten, are you? Okay. First question. Well, I think we spoke about it last night, but I'll repeat it. Is that I'm not surprised on the election as a whole. Um, I feel that the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris was a poor candidate. Um, and many people have their reasons for that. I personally think that the fact that a lot of people saw her as being imposed rather than elected through a primary process played a big part on it. And also, I think as hard as she tried to distance herself from the Joe Biden administration, people just saw her as another extension of his policies. So,
Mhm.
uh, along with, of course, data can only tell you so much. But when you pay attention to what's happening in the community, when you pay attention to what people are saying, it was not surprising. I saw a lot more Trump support this time around in places that usually it was not found. I live in the Portland metro area, and I think the last two elections that he ran, maybe I saw one Trump supporter through like a Trump sign maybe once. This time I saw several. I was also able to travel to different parts of the country, and I saw the same thing. Parts where usually you wouldn't see him, you saw much more support. So I think those uh, served as kind of an indication of the general population. You're talking about the Hispanic vote, right? Um, it was a little
Yeah,
curious to
we
this.
will go. We will go deep into that. I want to have first a general overview.
Oh yeah,
Um,
so to answer your general
election.
overview,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I feel that uh, most people are already untrusting of politicians and political, well, what traditional are like political establishments,
Right.
and they saw Kamala Harris as an extension of that, while
Mm,
they saw the people that supported Trump, they see him as an anti-establishment figure, right? This person might be rude, this person might be a little wacko, but at least what they see it as, at least he's honest, at
mm.
least he's not lying to us as the other people are. Uh, so not surprising, to be honest, that Kamala lost this election.
Yeah, interesting. And but we're gonna have also Brother Tarek join us. Hopefully, he can join us. But another really statistics, and you started talking, really, jumping ahead of the gun about the Hispanic voters and other really key points, or like, right, it's like what really motivated voters. And Tarek is back. Let me just put him on stage here.
Sorry.
Um,
Sorry about that.
yeah, it's fine, Brother Tarek. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah.
You are okay. That's
Like it's traversing the effects of this election
mm,
have proven to be very stressful and difficult.
yeah. Yes, and you just join us. And for those also who don't know Tariq, really a brother of mine and really passionate activist, Palestinian writer as well. And you have been at the forefront at the movement, literally asking for accountability on from Apple and asking for the governments to literally start arming Israel and ceasefire in Gaza
Hmm.
and just justice in general. And you joined Friends of the Congo and other organization as well to demand essentially the same thing, right? So we had the election results, and I was kind of giving like an overview, like a breakdown of who voted, and but I want to know first as a general like feeling, right? Like what you thought of the results. Were you surprised? Were you not surprised? But Alex kind of said that he wasn't surprised. And but what do you think?
Um, I feel like I wasn't surprised really. I think you know Kamala Harris ran a campaign that pandered so far to the right that it lost a lot of people who were kind of in the middle on the left, and it just like it made the Democratic Party way less appealing for anyone who wasn't willing to like vote for supporting genocide and for supporting apartheid. And I think really what it comes down to is like she did not make people feel like they were being seen or heard at all. And Trump was doing that. Trump was like, regardless if it was a lie or if it was like a facade or something fake that he was putting out into the world, people bought it. And in American politics, it's not really about like your game plan or what you actually bring to the table. It's about how people view that game plan. And people view his game plan as better than hers. And so like that's why she won. And people are trying to like cast blame on people that voted third party or voted green. But even if Kamala won all the green votes, she lost by such a large percentage that Trump would have won anyway.
Yeah, and something really remarkable also, that was a landslide in like an historic win. The
Yeah.
Republican Party hasn't won the popular vote in 20 years, and Donald Trump just did that. And I was about to talk about what motivated voters, right? And about 31% of the voters identify the economy as a primary issue in their decision making, with really like a really significant portion, like we're talking about 45%, feeling worse off financially compared to 4 years ago. So really, and just jumping right to you, Axkana, in terms of what could have explained. I'm really curious to know, for example, why the Latino voters, giving the fact um, that Trump has been really the Trump that he has been, like he hasn't changed on immigration issues, on mass deportation, and he talked about, his senior advisor talked about denaturalizing immigrants who just became citizen, right? But we saw Latinos or Hispanic voters voted in a way that I just mentioned, um, for Donald Trump. Like, why is that? Like 45%, which is, like I said earlier, a 13-point increase from 2020. Aksana, why do you think that the Hispanic or Latino voters? Because that to me was mind blowing.
Yeah, that's a good question. And disclaimer: I can't speak for the entire Latino population, right? Um, but I think there's
Yeah, I was
several
gonna
points
make
to
you
make.
a spokesperson, but I'm kidding.
What was that?
I was gonna make you the spokesperson, but I'm joking.
I'm the spokesperson for the entire Latino population of the world. Yeah, I think there's several points to make.
Yeah.
Right. I think the first one is that the Latino Hispanic population, how you want to define it,
Mhm.
it's a very diverse demographic to begin with.
Yeah.
Right, we can't just put them all under one category of how they vote or how they tend to who they tend to support. Stereotypically, I can already mention that if you were to ask a Latino voter, already the stereotypical mindset that there's certain demographics that vote conservative Republican. um, Cubans are the number one example, and then you have individuals who come from countries that tend to have socialist governments. So there's like the Venezuelans, there's the people who lived in El Salvador through the Cold War, Nicaragua, Guatemala. If you were to come to the U.S. already with a illegal status as a refugee, permanent resident, or whatever, you already have the tendency to vote Republican. And I believe the reason for that is that the Hispanic Latino community, statistically, they tend to be a lot more conservative than what people uh, tend to realize or
Mhm.
accept, right?
Christian values, family
There's
values.
religious values is a big one. Family values, as what they see, is a big one. And I think statistically, if you were to look at um, the elections before 2000, a large number of the Hispanic population voted Republican. Now, I think the big deciding factor for Hispanics or Latinos the vote Democrat is immigration. If you are impacted by immigration, then you tend to vote Democrats. And I think what we're seeing is I will tend to, bet on this is that the people who voted for Donald Trump are not impacted by immigration. Uh, Either they already have their permanent resident or citizenship when they arrived, or they're first, second, third generation Hispanic Latinos, right? If you are not impacted by it, then it makes very little sense for you to support a party that's not as quote unquote um, religious or conservative.
Mm.
Um, I think we need to understand that the average US citizen or individual is not aware or is an expert on immigration policy. Most
Mhm.
people don't see it or understand it. Therefore, when you hear about Donald Trump saying we're going to deport all these illegal criminals, they're not seeing families, right? They're seeing bad people. They're seeing people who are stereotypically put on the TV. The big ones are like the gangs or the narcos, right? They're not seeing it as families being separated. And that the same goes with the Latino population who's like second, third generation. They're not seeing themselves. They're not seeing their parents.
Mhm.
because they already have that legal status, right? So take immigration out of the
Mhm.
equation, and then I think that's when you start to understand the trends of why you have a lot of people in the Hispanic vote voting Republican. Also, I think I saw that in the men or the male population, it was much higher, right? I think I saw somewhere there was like 54% of those who voted
Mhm.
that identify as Latino male voted for Trump. That again is not surprising. A lot of the uh, Latino male population, they tend to work in industries that are impacted a lot by the economy. Thinking um, small business, construction is the main one that comes to mind. um, and what they see, if you put themselves in if you put yourselves in their shoes, they see that if the economy is impacted, they're impacted, right? They work not hourly, but they work through contracts. um, so when you put
Yeah.
that, it makes sense why they say the economy is their biggest concern. um, they saw an inflation, they saw a higher cost of living, they probably saw a hard time getting back to these work sites, and they attribute that to the administration that was in power, which is the Joe Biden
Mm.
administration, right? um,
Yeah.
and then let's talk about the people who are impacted by immigration. um, I want to say these are the people that probably didn't vote. They saw a stagnant administration that didn't do much on immigration policy. um, Once
Mhm.
again, I think most people don't understand that how it works. You can't just wave a magic wand and say, I'm gonna naturalize all these people. You have to go through the proper channels. And it's been a deadlock since 2008. And the Democrats have been promising a pathway or something, and it hasn't been delivered. I think the only significant immigration policy enacted by Biden was the one that he enacted a few months ago, stating that if you are married to a U.S. citizen, you're able to stay in the country while your naturalization process is being processed. And that got blocked by the courts like 2 weeks right afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So they see a party that hasn't delivered. And maybe a lot of them decided not to vote. They're like, I'm fed up with politics. I'm fed up with um, this party that keeps saying, hey, vote for us. We're pro immigration, but nothing gets done. So a combination of that, people that didn't vote, and then these growing demographics who are third, second, fourth generation that are not impacted by immigration, I think that helps explain
Mhm.
that Hispanic Latino vote for the Republican Party.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tarek, I really want also to shift on the Muslim slash Arabs slash Palestinian votes, and really staggering data that I have with me. For example, in Chester, Maine, Jill Stein was first with 44%. Trump came second, 37%, and Harris 18%. And in Dearborn, Michigan, for example, Jill Stein was second. So uh, we have seen for 13 consecutive months, pretty much, literally, genocide and children being killed, and
Mhm.
people, entire people being starved to death, and people being ethnic cleansed. Do you think that that kind of played a role into why people didn't come out and vote blue this time? If not, like, why is that? Or where was the shift?
I mean, yeah. Uh, I think it was a massive failure on the Democrats' part to even pretend to go the anti-war route, right? What you saw was people just being unwilling to vote for someone that was actively killing their family, and not just like it's not just that she was like that Arabs and Muslims were unwilling to vote for her because of the genocide, but also because like she was not giving us any sort of reason to vote for her because she was saying that I'm not going to change anything. Like her plans were going to be the same. Like if people kept asking her for plans, her approach to the genocide would be any different than Biden, and she consistently spouted out this nonsense that Israel has a right to defend itself, continuously like so for Arabs and Muslims, their people and their communities were going to be hurt regardless, either way, if they voted for Harris or if they voted for Trump. And she did not help people feel like if I vote for her, maybe my people have a chance. That like, so she failed, and you look at people like Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, who both
Mm,
ran progressive anti-war
yeah.
policy like campaigns, and they won. So like pandering
70%.
to the left and like actually saying that like we want to stop violence and war, that will win you the election.
Yeah, that's crazy. And you mentioned about Congresswoman Talib, and I think she got 77%. And Kamala, like she lost. Like it's funny how same ticket people are willing to vote. People who vote for senators or Congress folks blue, but then when it comes to presidential, they wouldn't vote. Why? Why?
Yeah. I
Why?
I don't I don't know. I don't know the I can't understand that. And that's the thing is I'm not someone that ever told anyone to not vote, right? I never said not vote for anyone. I explicitly went out of my way to try and not talk about this election to tell people um like where I was voting because I understood why people would be voting for Harris, right?
Yeah.
The entire idea of not voting in a presidential election that's this important is crazy to me. And I think what happened was you saw a lot of a lot of people might have wanted to sit out this election, and then they got I don't know inspired or brainwashed by Trump, and then Trump was like, "Actually, I'm going to do everything that Kamala says that she's not going to do," or like he really did a good job of just convincing people that he was the person to vote for, and Kamala did not. That when it comes down to it, like that's really what it broke
Yeah.
down to, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of.
No, yeah, valid points. Two things to that. I think number one, it's in my opinion, I think that the senators you just mentioned, like AOC and Omar, they have I'm gonna use the word luxury. I don't know if that's the right thing, but they can pander to their constituency, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they can be radical. Just like if you had a senator from LA County, you can be radical and say we're gonna lean to the left, we're gonna be anti-established, and that's gunpowder to their votes, right? When you have a presidential candidate, you have to be careful. And one thing that was said here, that Tariq here said that she ran too much to the center. Um, I want to push back, at least for the Hispanic population, going back to how conservative they are. I'm going to say that they probably thought that she was too far to the left for their liking.
How
The
would she
Republican
move
Party,
out to the left? Because
and I can explain that.
yeah, go
The
ahead.
Republican Party has had 8 years for marketing, right? And they did a really good job at marketing. If you were to go to a traditional conservative Hispanic or Mexican family, what have they heard from the left? They heard, or what did they hear the left stands for? They Number one, they're anti-religion, right? They're trying to take church away from school. They're no longer
Mm-hmm.
saying I pledge allegiance to the flag because of God. They're like, oh my, what is that? They're trying to convert your kids, question their sexuality. They're like, what is that? um, you're no longer Latino, you're Latinx. Why am I Latinx? Oh, because of gender fluidity. What kind of BS is that? That
Mm,
scares the traditional conservative family. And the Latinos are very
mm,
conservative. I'll repeat that again. And this is something that's been heard in my social circles, right? They're like, why are we pondering to these people who are quote unquote like anti-God? That's the first one, right? So that example in itself shows that they weren't thinking about, and I can talk about this on my social circle, about other contexts. Like they weren't really thinking about the war in Israel and Gaza. That wasn't a deciding factor for them. What was the deciding factor for them was religion and the economy, right? This for the Hispanics. So, and that's what we have to understand, that when you are running for presidential candidate, not everybody thinks the same way we do, and they have to somehow try to get everybody without sounding, in this case, too far to the left, because they're going to alienate other people that usually voted for them, which is weird, right? For some people, they were too centrist. For some people, she was too radical. She was too left, right? Um,
Which is wild.
wow,
which
but
is wild, right?
It's just wild.
But that is the
it's
truth,
very
right? And
interesting. Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry, I want to let you finish.
And I want to also like point out that older Hispanics, in this case Mexican Americans, they still have fond memories of the Republican Party. Because if you were to ask someone that got naturalized in the 80s, they would say the Republican Party is not that bad. They actually were really good to immigrants. It was them that passed the um, naturalization or the amnesty in the 80s that pondered to a lot of them who are now middle class, right? So once again, take away immigration. And it makes a lot of sense for these traditional conservative families to vote for Trump. I have social in my social circles. We have people that said, "Well, back in 2016, I didn't agree with Trump, but now I realize that I've been lied to, and I actually did my research. I blah 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 blah." They talk about all the marketing that's been done in the 8 years, how the Democratic Party is evil, how they're lying to you, and how they're big corporations. And by the way, they're anti-religion, and that makes sense for them. Why would I vote for you when I can vote for someone that actually aligns for my values?
Yeah, but I really gonna push back a little bit of on what you said, because I
Sure.
don't think that, because you said at the beginning, and I think that was kind of like contradicting too, that and that was also part of our conversation yesterday, um, is that Republicans tend to win the U.S. election, the presidential election, when people don't come out and vote
When people don't
massively,
vote,
right?
that's right.
Yeah, people don't vote, so we can agree on that. And in 2008, Barack Obama, he won the election, and 2012 again, and then in 2020, Biden came back, the Democratic Party came back, and they won the election. Barack Obama, he ran on a very, very progressive, agenda, and he won. And Biden kind of did the exact same thing by showing that he was going to do things completely. He was going to do the complete opposite of what Trump has been doing when it comes to immigration, when it comes to student loan, when it came to the economy, when it came to healthcare. He ran on those ideas that are quote unquote progressive, right?
Mhm.
So the same people who voted for Biden in 2020, you're not gonna tell me, or maybe you were just being specific for the Hispanic votes. You're not gonna tell me that suddenly they were not okay with free healthcare. They were not okay with free, with the student loan relief. That they were not okay with uh, immigration, a pathway for the friends and family, loved ones to get citizenship, to workers' right. Like he didn't even endorse unions, right? Like the Democratic Party for the 4 years that they have been together,
Mhm.
and we all know they have the benefit of just being in a union when you work. So
Mhm.
what happened to all of those people? You cannot say that the issue, and I'm gonna let maybe Tariq respond, because you said that they were going too far right, being centrist, and Oksana is saying that 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 the people, the Hispanic, thought that the Democrat were going too far left. So Tariq, what do you think? Like, what happened to all these voters that were excited in 2020, 2008? What happened to them? Where did they go?
I think they that's I think they realized that these people weren't really weren't actually going to give them what they wanted or what they were promoting, because isn't like I mean if you look at all the promises that the Democratic Party has been giving us over the last, I don't know, 2 decades, right? They're constantly saying, we're going to make life better. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. We have years of proof and anecdotal evidence saying, no, they won't actually do that, right? And so I think a lot of people got disillusioned, especially because with Kamala, she didn't even speak on a lot of the major issues like healthcare or like education or things like that. She didn't even touch on those. Um, and I think where they went, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. But in terms of like how some people say that they went too far to the right, and some people say she went like too far to the left, I think those are the people that have just the people that went this. Sorry, I can't talk.
It's all right.
The way that some people claim that she went too far to the left, I think those are the people that were encouraged by Trump to think the way that he does, to encourage this idea of, like, for example, for like the Latino community, machismo and like honor and like it's not just that it's not just that they went far to the left, they were pandering to the right and they were growing that base a lot. They were growing those thoughts, those ideas, this idea that like you have to have a very specific society. You have to have go like this, like everything has its place. I think that's where they went. They went, "Oh, I like that. I was raised on that. I'm used to that." That's where
Uh,
they went.
I get it. So you are saying that the Democratic Party did not go far left. It's actually the Republicans with Donald Trump emboldening that ideas, they went too far right. That's
Mhm.
essentially what you're saying.
and
Which
they
is,
and they
yeah,
grew those sentiments to a point where like even if someone had considered them on the left side where they were maybe a little bit more conservative, they had this little these views of like, yeah, like I think the world should be like this, but that's like my world and like that's just like how I understand it. And then Trump was like, no, the whole world could be exactly like that, 10 times 10. And then they're like, oh, I really like that. And I think that's where they
yeah,
went.
yes, Axkana.
Gayton, you have to repeat the question, man. I'm sorry.
No, we
Yeah,
just
sorry, I
discussed.
answered
That's you're fine.
Yeah,
that.
Tariq was saying that he doesn't think that the Democrats went too far left, and as he demonstrated that Kamala didn't even touch on certain issues and didn't even
Mhm,
address the
mhm,
needs of the American people. As I said earlier, people were saying that the economy was the number one of the issues overall, and the second was the border, right?
mhm,
So
mhm,
she did not go left in terms of that. She did not provide free healthcare. Like
mhm,
that's
mhm,
going far left. She did not provide free college, free community college, free education. She didn't do that, right? She
mhm,
didn't advocate tirelessly uh, 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 so I was talking about like healthcare. I was talking about a union. She didn't advocate tirelessly for union,
mhm,
right? For people to actually have unions. She did not advocate for an increase in minimum wage. Like the
mhm,
federal minimum wage is still at $7.25, right? So she did not advocate for those things that could have made her think or say that she's far left. And then she
mhm,
embraced, and that's actually um, like a news that I shared. I was It was written on like an article on the Guardian talking about what happened in Europe and how for the past 10 years we have seen the left lose ground, and recently in France with Marine Le Pen, le Rassemblement National, like those really far right wing movements getting powers because the left has pretty much embraced centrism, right? Like they were more worried about keeping that capitalist idea, imperialistic idea of what how the economy should go about workers' right, than actually saying, you know what, they're going like far right, let's go to the far left to gain those folks who are drawn into that to draw in or attract the folks who are struggling with paying the bills, the medical bills, and sending the kids in college. They didn't do it. They just like we saw Kamala with inviting prominent Republicans advocate and run for her while pushing away Palestinian Americans who have been historically voting blues. So what do you think?
No, yeah. I think the best way to understand it is that people pay attention to issues that matter to them, right? And you're talking about it as a whole. I think a lot of people aren't seeing it as a whole; they're seeing a very specific issue. Um,
Mhm,
and I'm gonna try to explain it by sharing two stories. The first one is about a high school friend of mine who I have on social media, and she posted that, and I just mentioned it previously, but let me go into it. That in 2016, when Trump came into the national spotlight as a politician, she was against him and disgusted by him, by the rhetoric that he was sharing. Right? She goes on to state facts. I'm gonna use air quotes here. The facts. The facts were that under the Trump administration, we had a good economy. The facts are that under the Trump administration, we had stability. I'm guessing she's talking about inflation. The facts is that we had security. Um, Some people are afraid to go into big cities. Downtown Portland is a big one. I hear about it from my colleagues all the time. Um,
Yeah.
Now she's saying that now that I've done my own research, now that I'm no longer listening to the mainstream media, I see that he had a successful presidency, and that's what I'm
Compared
voting for. Compared
compared to
to
Biden
compared to now, right? Compared to what it is, what they're playing now.
now.
So they're saying that the facts are he was a good president, and then she posted, and I pray to God that God leads this person, aka the religion aspect of it, right? At the end of the day, he has those traditional church values. This is a Latina female who was born here, U.S. citizen. She's a single mother. She was struggling to go to college. She just recently graduated, and congratulations to her. So all these things that you mentioned, you would think, she would probably go for Democrats because they're talking about student loan forgiveness. They're talking about people who, have social benefits. But it was the opposite. She was like, I worked hard to get where I am. I'm working hard to get myself out of, the debt that I'm in, and Donald Trump is my candidate for that. Story number two is about a gentleman who's also here, but he's descendant from Chile. I believe he's first generation. um, and when I spoke to him, very similar, saying back under Trump, we had security. Now we had BLM, we have ACA, we have Antifa. That's, his words, effing up downtown Seattle, breaking all these businesses, destroying small businesses, all these drug addicts. Um, and he went to go ahead and called the Democratic Party and the Kamala communists. They're like, these are a communist party. Therefore, they think they're left to the extreme, right? Based on those policies. And I can tell you that stereotypically, a lot of Hispanic male who I have in my social circles that tend to work in like these trade jobs, they are frustrated because what they see based on the marketing, based on the media, is they see a Democratic Party that's catering to what they see as drug addicts, right? Why are drug addicts getting all these benefits and I'm not? Why are homeless people getting free housing and I'm not? Why are small business struggling? And we're giving all these social benefits to people that are lazy and quote unquote don't deserve it, right? That's what they're seeing.
Hmm.
So they're seeing the Democratic Party as being left and not catering to their working class, the working class that they belong to. And the reason they see is because that's what matters to them. They're not seeing the entire picture, right? They're not seeing the things that you just mentioned. So I think that helps explain, uh, back to my point, that some people in this demographic thought that she was too far left for what they were looking at, for what valued to them, which was these economy and religious family values.
And absolutely, Oksana, and I think it's really important to always dig deep because it doesn't help us to pretend that there isn't a cause and effects result to what we're seeing right now. We cannot just say that all people who voted for them, all of them are racist, all of them are xenophobic, and it's really important to see maybe what went wrong. And I think that's the conversation that I'm having with you guys. Like he won, what's next, right? Because he's going to be the president of the United States in January, that we like it or not. So how are we going to? What are we going to do moving forward, right? And in terms of organizing and for Congo, for Haiti, for Sudan, for Palestine, for the Middle East, and because the U.S. really represents is a really a big guy when it comes to foreign policy. Whatever the U.S. president decides, usually is where the world is going to go, like the direction to which the world would go in terms of conflict around the world. And so I'm gonna go get back to you, Tariq. What's what's the way forward? What's the future now of the movement that you started to essentially recognize or humanize Palestinians and Arabs and Muslim into putting an end finally into the conflict? Like, do you think that Trump is going to be a better president in that sense? Like, what's your take of how are you going to go moving forward, starting as soon as we're done with this conversation? Like,
Yeah.
what are we? What can we do, or what are we going to do? Or what are you going to do moving forward under Trump presidency?
Well, I mean,
Well, I mean,
to be clear,
to be clear,
uh,
uh,
Trump is definitely not going to be better for the Palestinian people. Point blank. Period. Like, like we know this to be true. You're right. He's the first president to have moved the embassy to Jerusalem, even though it was like a widely like discouraged move by the majority of the UN. Right. Like so. Like we know that Trump's not going to be good for Palestine. Uh, what we do from this movement forward is build our bases in terms of our communities and educate the people around us, right? Revolutions, people always roll their eyes at the word revolution, right? They go, oh, this isn't serious. Like you're not being realistic. You're not being real. Like I have bills to pay, right? Revolutions start from the bottom up. They always have. They always start from the bottom up because the people at the top are too corrupt to even think about changing things in a way that actually benefits the people. And so when you talk about the idea of a revolution and what that means like actually learning how to organize and be in community with one another. I made a video the other day where I was saying that you should look up to Palestinian activists because of the way that they've been able to organize despite all of the loss that they've been suffering. And that's what I firmly believe
Great.
in, you know, because uh, when we talk about organizing, when we talk about protesting, we're not just talking about coming out onto the streets every Sunday when you're off, right? We're not talking about organizing sit-ins and things just on their own. We're talking about like actually building movements and power and like and like and knowing our local electorates, right? Like we need to know who in our city actually stands up for us. What kind of progressive can we get in a city council? What kind of progressive can we get for the state? Right? Look at the socialist parties, look at the green parties, look at the parties that actually have candidates that are willing to do the work to bring resources to people. And you build those up. You build up those communities. You actually understand what it means to to withhold your labor from an economy that is just benefiting from it, right? And so in terms of like what do we do moving forward under a Trump presidency, we do as much as we can. We educate, we learn, and we have to come
yeah,
together as people. I feel like the American people, they're so asleep that they will literally let their neighbors be put away into concentration camps faster than they'd be willing to wake up and realize, oh, I actually have to do something about this. And a lot of people, especially the conversation right now, the conversation is happening is like, Trump won. We're going to lose our rights. This is going to be awful. We're going to lose everything that we have. It's so complacent and so just kind of like, I'm going to let the system do everything that it is going to do to me. And we need more people to wake up and be like, no, like we can stand up, we can speak out, we can get out with our bodies, we can withhold our labor, we can do so many different types of things. And it's not unrealistic. You just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Xcana. American first policy. That's literally Trump's
mhm.
motto, and you know, deprioritizing international human rights, foreign aid. What for you the future like of America, like for the next at least for the next 4 years, right? Under
Mhm.
Trump, but what's the way forward? What's next?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot of the same things from the previous election. He's gonna try to pick up where kind of where he left off. Um, I do want to say that it's very intricate, right? You can't just wave a magic wand and do America first. There's many layers to it. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about the imposed tariffs. Like, oh, the tariffs are coming back. How's that gonna look? Well, let's look back. What happened, right? Like, we had a big giant tariffs, and then we had a whole bunch of exemptions that came out right afterwards. We had the Muslim ban, and then we had the courts block it, and then we had a bunch of countries that got exempted, right? So I think we're gonna see a lot of that, where he's gonna make big power moves, and then there's gonna be checks. Hopefully, the checks and balances still work, and prevent that. I know there's a big fear of the Supreme Court uh, turning into a conservative court, and that's a valid fear. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens with that. Um, and how do we move forward? That's a great question, and I'm using a. I can echo everything that Tariq just said. Right, we need to mobilize. If it's a just cause, people will come. Um, I'm gonna throw a wild card out there and just a controversial statement for some people. I think we need to bring back the church when it comes to social movements. Um, Especially, I'm speaking here for the Hispanic population. I think we need to meet people where they're at, and if religion is a big part of it, um, the church can be used for social justice. I'm gonna echo back to what happened in the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s. I think we forget how much the church had, what a big role the church played in that movement, right? Where were they having the congregations? Who were the leaders? We're talking about the big one, MLK. You know, he was a reverend. People rallied behind that because they already had that base, that structure, which was the church, the religion. I think for the Hispanic population, we have that. Go to Sunday mass in Spanish. It's packed, right? You have the whole families there. Um, is it controversial? Of course, you know, the church can also be conservative, but there's also a lot of people that are keeping their religion and embracing other branches of Christianity that are much more progressive. And I feel that if we're able to bring back that movement back, where we have the social justice leaders and these progressive church leaders combining under the same message, I think we're able to see a big
Mm.
shift, right? That's just a wild card idea. Like, okay, we have the big problem, like the big idea now. Let's actually start solutions. How do we start, right? I know, Gaten, you are a religious man, and you go to a church that's
I
quote
am.
unquote, you know, progressive, right? That for a lot of Hispanic, like, whoa, what do you mean the church, the pastor wears jeans? What do you mean they play, you know, guitar on on the thing? You know, I feel like we have an opportunity to be able to um back to what I say, pick up where the people where they're at, and definitely use those existing mechanisms to help move the message forward. And I've seen some pretty convincing messages where people are posting um, religion as a way to combat Trump, where they go like, "Hey, I just saw this post not too long ago saying if Jesus was to run against Trump, Jesus would have lost based on the voting demographics." Right? We have people saying, "Hey, we have all these." I used to heard this term, Christian nationalist. That was the first time I hear about that, saying they're advocating for um, for the Bibles to be on schools, but they're taking away free lunches, right?
Mm.
Or they're advocating for the Ten Commandments to be posted on every school, but they're taking they're reducing the payment for the teachers. And when you start using those religious messages to these conservatives, that's when they start going like, "Huh, wait, you're right. That makes no sense." Right. So you asked the question, how can we move forward? I think that'd be a good strategy for community leaders moving forward. Um, yeah, at least for the
It's like
conservative Hispanic population.
bringing I like what you said specifically about kind of like making this side more appealing to the folks who are a little bit more like more religious and need that sort of kind of structure or that like idea that like, hey, like these people believe in what I believe in. Like you have to give them and let them know like they stand with you, they're on your side, everyone's on the same side. But like, yeah, it's like because I mean that's really why Trump won is because he made people believe that he was on their side. It's not because he actually is on their side. It's not because he's actually giving them what they need. It's because he was like, I understand you. The world is messed up. You were right, and like they're like, oh, he gets it.
No,
Yeah.
agreed, agreed. And I mentioned this to Gates in one of our previous conversations, was that um, the Democratic Party, in my opinion, stay stagnated. They didn't change. They had every opportunity to change in 2016, like a wake up call, and they didn't. They just pondered to vote for me, not for Trump, because Trump is bad, right? And they thought that was going to happen. So I agree with you, Tariq, and I would hope that they're being genuine, right? Not like Trump, or like, well, I stand with you, but in reality, he doesn't. But actually create um, leaders or parties or movements that actually mean what they say. And I hope if the Democratic Party is going to make those changes, they're being genuine. They're not just being fake to get votes. And I'm a big supporter of voting and voting for the party that agrees with you. If the Democratic Party is not catering to that, then vote for the party that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to speak to for a moment just on.
Is it me or are we losing him?
Oh,
I
can
still I
you
still
not
see you
hear me?
fine. I still see you fine.
All right.
Oh, I think it was okay. Yeah, go ahead, Tarek. Go ahead.
Sorry. Um, I think if the Democratic really wanted to win, I think they would have. I think throwing this election is something that we also have to consider, like the Democrats might have been willing to do, because then they could blame it all on people like us. Like they can blame it on the Arabs, on the Muslims, and the people that refuse to vote for them because they're upholding white supremacy and genocide and all of these things. Uh, so I went to a conference last weekend, weekend before the election, and it was amazing. It was hosted by Professor Butch Ware, and he had a bunch of people come out and speak. He had Saul Williams, he had Claudia de la Cruz, and Brianna Joy Gray, which was like this incredible political analyst. And there's a conversation between Professor Butch and Brianna Joy Gray that like blew my mind, in that the Democratic Party has always had like this rotating villain in every presidency that they've had for like at least since like Bush or Clinton, where even when the Democrats were in charge and they had control of the House and the Senate, there was always one Democrat in the party responsible for bringing down a bill that would have brought affordable house care or health care to fruition. And the Democratic Party does not really actually want the change that they advocate for. They are a lot like the Republicans. What we've learned in this past election, the Democrats are like Republican light, right? And that really, really came to show with how much they were advocating. We have Liz Cheney, we have all these Republicans willing to vote for Kamala Harris, right? The reality is the Democratic Party, um, I think, could have been the vehicle for change a long time ago, and they choose not to because it keeps the people in power in power. And I think we have to come to terms with the fact that maybe the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, but they hide it a lot better. And we have to start, and that's why I voted for Green, Axcana, because like they spoke to what I believed in, right? They spoke to a world that held people accountable for their war crimes. They spoke to a world where people are uplifted by each other with community. That is the world that I want to live in. And that's the world that I think a lot of Democrats want to live in, but the Democrats are not painting it the way that they should be.
I think ultimately, right, because this is really democracy, and I'm saying that because I'm actually coming from a country that has dictatorship, like because y'all don't know what dictatorship is, right? But the democracy is this, right? Voting, being able to cast your vote, and you vote for what you believe in, and you vote because one you can, and that's your right, but you vote because you want to. You vote because you believe in the person's agenda, what they, like you said, they speak to you. So nobody should be shaming the other person for, and I'm talking about like my Palestinian folks for voting third party or for not voting at all, for people for not voting, because when you run a campaign, it is your job to convince. It is your job to inspire. Give people a reason why they should stop the job, go out there and cast a vote. Why they should not be sleeping, working, watching TV, why they should be out there and vote. It is your job as a candidate, the person running, spending millions of dollars. It is your job to convince them. It's your job to create a platform that will put people together and not alienate others because of what they believe in, right? So yeah, rest assured, guys. Like people voted the way they wanted, and I think, and I'm saying that first as an immigrant, right? I came in the U.S. like in 2013, and I was saying earlier that's when I met Axcana. Um, I came as an international student, so I'm literally my presence here. It's because I'm literally a product of the U.S. foreign policy. I'm literally a product of immigration, and me being an activist is because of the shithole that, excuse the language, that the U.S. created in the Congo. has been created in Congo. And seeing my parents advocating for democracy, for justice, that naturally just trickled down to me. And I was like, why would I have to be quiet when people are dying? Why do I have to be quiet when people are starving? So my organizing efforts, me talking and my activism is also a product of the US foreign policy, right? So
Mhm.
I'm never gonna apologize for being too radical, right? Because me not being radical or seeing certain behaviors, literally, I was able to witness some of the most atrocities in the world, the injustice with my people, right? So I always look at that way. So that's why when I speak through that lens of empathy, of understanding why people are frustrated, or why people rather work because they live paycheck to paycheck and not go out and vote because we didn't do enough to convince them, and that's on them. That's not on that's on the politics, on the politicians, not on the people. You know. And we've been talking for 56 minutes, and I really want, because I think it was really important. Um, for me to kind of mention, contextualize. It's Friends of the Congo. We're talking about the Congo, what that means in terms of immigration, what that means in terms of Congolese, what that means in terms of asylum seekers, in terms of international students. So, and folks listening to us, please stay with me, and I'm just gonna let you guys go. And again, thank you guys for coming. Oksana, I appreciate your friendship, your expertise, appreciated.
Yeah.
Tariq, you have been an
One last thing,
amazing.
Gaten,
Yes,
before you
yeah,
finish it,
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah,
just like the PSA. Um, you know, we have the privilege here that a lot of people right now don't. The first time Trump became president in 2016, I myself was an undocumented student, and I felt that fear and I felt that need to lay low because of immigration reasons. Right? It was very a real possibility that if I were to be an activist and put a target on my back per se, I would be deported. I'm now a permanent resident, and we have a privilege that, or I have a privilege. Uh, that I didn't back in 2016, right? So, for the people listening, and you have that privilege, just be mindful of that, and know that you're talking for people who, for various reasons, right now might feel that they need to stay low to be safe.
yeah. Tariq.
Um, it's really easy for us to kind of accept what's happening and not do anything about it and feel tired and exhausted and be like, especially, um, there's this conversation that was happening on my Instagram, where my Black friends were saying that they were like tired, right? That they've been doing this work for a long time, and it feels uh, awful that people are saying no, you still can get up and fight, when especially when like when I voted for the Green Party, and a lot of my Black friends are saying that you voted against us because you voted green, even though the green vote didn't really like affect the election. A lot of people feel that people who voted green were being um I don't know, like, that there's a level of racism to it, right? And what it comes down to is you have the people that be in power really trying to separate us and like divide and conquer, right? They're trying to pit us against each other. In the end, we want a world where we don't have to fight as hard. I'm tired of fighting. I'm exhausted. It is exhausting. Um, and we just need to make sure that as we accept the results of this election, we figure out how to move forward, that we are in community with one another and we support each other, and we don't let this election drag us down and divide us and conquer us and force people to um, into further silos. I feel like I'm going on a rant, but if there's anything I've learned from this election and what to take from it, it's that we need to try our best to listen to each other and understand each other and help each other, and that is how we move forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We need to try our best to listen to each other, work with each other. I really appreciate you guys, Akskana, Tariq. Appreciate guys listening to us. Stay with us, guys. We're gonna keep doing it. We're gonna keep organizing. We're gonna keep educating. So thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Gaten.
So yeah. So guys, this was amazing, an amazing conversation with um, two great people, and you heard them. We were trying to unpack what happened, and you heard from a Latino person who was able to give perspectives that we might not have understood. Why would people vote the way they voted? Why people wouldn't come out and vote? We also heard from Tariq, right, about why some folks went ahead and voted third parties. Why the Democrats didn't listen to the aspiration and the hope of just wanting peace, right? So I'm gonna be speaking from the Congolese as a Congolese immigrant from that standpoint, right? So really, when you have to think about, because I said I came in this country as an international student, and then uh, things happening back home became a political a refugee, asylee, and just like Aksana, I was able to earn my way in the U.S. system as a resident. But not once I stopped advocating on behalf of those who were marginalized and oppressed, just like me. Not once I thought about just living in my comfort, right, of being in the US and being safe compared to my family back home. I continue to push, I continue to advocate as a student, and people who know me as a student saw my path. I joined Friends of the Congo, I joined Genocast on the Congolese Action Youth platform. So my activism started way back in college as a college student. And I was really able to put myself in danger. And this year alone, I've seen how things even got worse for international students. We had international students threatening deportation for just speaking or standing, with Palestine, right? Organizing and marching. And so in the midst of the conversation that we just had, because I usually get that question, who I think was gonna be better, Kamala or Trump, right? I get that question a lot. That people should just vote for Kamala. And I also have Republican friends. I'm not gonna lie. People I had really decent conversations, and respectful, way more than my some of my liberal friends, honestly, who voted for Donald Trump, and I know that. Um, but I cannot really answer that question of who could have been better for the Congo without really going deep into really like a history lesson for the Congo. Because when it comes really to the Congo, it's never really matter whether Democrats or Republican is going to be in the White House. Because for decades, uh, we've seen the U.S. I will even go back centuries. We've seen the U.S. Interests that have consistently come before Congo's well-being, and that's a fact. And Congo suffering, which has often been overlooked and ignored. That's why I really like this Free Congo movement that we started last year to put the Congo really at the front page so that we're no longer being ignored, no longer being overlooked. So 1885 is the Berlin Conference recognition. Uh, and that was the year that the Congo, and I keep saying that, was ended to one person who treated an entire country land, right, and their people as his personal property. Something very interesting to know or recognize is that the US was one of the very first country to recognize Leopold's claim on the Congo, effectively giving him a green light to everything that he done, including the genocide, as we call it, genocide for economic gain. So the president at the time was Grover Cleveland. Look it up. He was a Democrat. So he allowed the support. His support allowed literally uh, the brutality to continue on the Congo sufferings. Then we have 1909, 1908. That's when Congo became a Belgian colonies. And in 1908, um, the Congolese exploitation continued, right? And we had American companies that joined into the profit from the Congo's rubber. And that was done under President Theodore Roosevelt, a Republican. And later, We have William Howard Taft, another Republican, and all of that really shows that U.S. interests matter more than Congo's freedom, than Congo's lives, right? And it shouldn't be like that. You should not. For you to make profit, you don't have to step over people's lives for you to get your freedom, for you to get your wealth. Then we move to the independence of the Congo, 1960, 1961, with Congo finally gained that independence with Patrice Lumumba, first democratically elected president, prime minister of the country. He was speaking boldly about Congo sovereignty, but he was assassinated. How? By the CIA, the United States, right? So president at the time was Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, and he planned or conducted or led his administration to create or launch like a covert action against Lumumba, right? Because they would consider he was a threat to Western interest. And after Lumumba's assassination, a few months after that, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a Democrat, took office on January 20th, 1961. So after that, Congo had a dictator for 32 years, from 1965 to 1997, and that was a U.S. backed reign. And I'm not even exaggerating, because Mobutu ruled the Congo that he renamed Zaire at the time with an iron fist, and really he was able to enrich himself and at the same time enrich the West, right? So he was a really loyal ally to the United States. President Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democrat, was president when Mobutu came to power. He didn't stop him, right? And after him, there was Richard Nixon, a Republican. We have Gerald Ford, another Republican, Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, Ronald Reagan, yet another Republican, and even George W. Bush, a Republican. Or maybe that was George Senior Bush, yeah, a Republican. And they all supported Mobutu, a dictator that killed, that plundered the country, that killed his own people, imprisoned people. So across party line, the U.S. leaders backed a dictator who was devastating his own country, all because it served the Cold War interest, it served the Western interest, it served the American interest, right? And then we have the grave 1994 genocide that happened in Rwanda, and that genocide spilled over the Congo, right? That violence really spilled over Congo's border, bringing armed militias and chaos in the Congo with all the refugees and all these people who just massacred Tutsis in Rwanda. And who was in power in the US? Bill Clinton, a Democrat, right? So Clinton really watched as the genocides after the genocide itself in Rwanda did not do anything to stop it. They could have done it. The United Nations could have done it. The U.S., who was a really great sponsor of Rwanda, could have stopped it, right? They didn't. So they watched really that genocide's aftermath that led to the destabilization of the Congo, which fueled decades of conflict and suffering for millions of Congolese. Once again, the U.S. was just there and stood by, right? So then, 1996, 1997, please stay with me. And we have the first Congo War and really the rise of Laurent Desire Kabila. Because we had in 1996 the war that broke out in Rwanda and Uganda, backed by foreign interests, including the United States. They supported rebel groups led by Laurent Desire Kabila, right? And finally, the Mobutu regime fell in 1997 because Mobutu decided that he was going to nationalize all the Congolese companies, right? Take it away from the U.S., from West, and just make them Congolese. They didn't like it, so Kabila happened to take the power. So Clinton was still in office when that happened, and even though the U.S. saw that was happening, they didn't not do any. They didn't do anything to stop it. They didn't not do any. They didn't do anything to prevent Rwanda and Uganda to invade the Congo and kill and plunder. The Congolese continue to pay the price of a UN's foreign policy that I'm a product of. So then, in 2006, we have the first democratic elections and the rise of the CNDP, who later turned into the M23 that we know today. So 2006 election happened. These elections were far from being fair, right? Joseph Kabila was declared the winner in a result that really served outside outside interest more than Congolese interest. And soon after that, roundabout groups again they emerged, CNDP, and later on they evolved into M23, Mouvement du 23 Mars. They were able to literally terrorize an entire region. Who was in office in the U.S.? George W. Bush, a Republican. So, despite mounting evidence of friend-backed violence and Bush, and also the mapping report, the United States, the United Nations report that literally talk about crime against humanity, war crime, and genocide committed in the Congo, nothing happened. The U.S. did not do anything to uh, bring Rwanda and Paul Kagame to justice. 2011, another fraudulent election happened under Kabila's extended rule, right? And who was in power? Barack Obama, a Democrat. He did not intervene, even though he talked about creating, he wanted Africa to have strong institutions and not strong men. He still allowed the Congo to have strong men, right? So, an entire hope for Congo for a real democracy just was denied once more. So then we have, I mentioned earlier the activism of my family, my own dad, right? Protest, Catholic Church being the crackdown Catholic Church movement, my dad being jailed and released by United Nations in the Congo, my sister being jailed briefly, and all that happened, right, under Obama's regime or administration, and then soon after that was Donald Trump who came in power in 2016, right? Barack Obama, like I said, he was finishing his term. He's a Democrat, and then Donald Trump, a Republican, was beginning his. So nothing changed. The U.S. remained silent while the Congolese people continued to suffer for simply demanding the rights, right? Now we have 2019, a rigged election. We're almost there. Rigged election with a leaked report that literally showed that the current president that we had or that was declared at the time was not the winner. Who was in power? Donald Trump was in power. And the Senate actually said it that the president at the time who was declared the winner did not win the election. The US Senate said it. But yet the US continued to support someone who never won the election. So that pattern continued in 2023 with the latest chapter of the Congo struggle and the birth of the Free Congo movement. We saw another yet rigged election recently, right? Where the president supposedly elected with 73%. Who was in power? President Joe Biden and Democrats. So, as I've tried to demonstrate, like really, the Congo, it's decades, if not centuries of neglect. It's centuries in which no matter which party holds power, Congo continue to suffer. So a system really that failed Congo, not just a party. So Kamala or Trump, yes, you know, Trump was elected. It would not have mattered whether it was a Democrat, whether it was a Republican, because the answer was never as simple as picking a party, right? We recognize as friends of the Congo that we have perhaps more like an easy access with the Democratic Party. Well, when you ask Congolese people themselves, people who lived through all these dates that I went through, it really didn't matter to them who was president or who was not, right? Because for them, it's clear that U.S. policy, regardless of the party in power, has prioritized American interests as they should, but not over Congolese lives. So we have seen the same play out from Cleveland in 1885, the Democrats, to Biden in 2023, another Democrats, like a circle. So the system itself, the foreign policy priorities, the alliances, the economic interest has failed the Congo. So it's really interesting, important for us to understand those things when we talk about what to what to do moving forward. And I mentioned that I'm a product of immigration. I'm a product of foreign policy, but so is this country, right? The United States, from its very founding, was built on foreign policies. that brought people from around the world to this land. African was brought in chains as slaves. Irish immigrants fleeing famine helped build the railroads and factories. Chinese labor laid the track that connected east to west. Japanese American faced internment during World War II, while Vietnamese and Korean immigrants came in the wake of wars. So, and today, immigrants from the Middle East and Africa, they continue to shape and enrich this country. We are bringing labors, we're bringing culture, we bring our own strength that eventually become the U.S. strength, the American strength. So, American diversity is a strength, and it was built on the back of those who came from afar, those who came from war, those who came from refugee camp, those who came from persecution. So, yet it is foreign policy that has often failed to uphold the dignity of those um, very people it once depended on. So really, I'm giving this whole speech about Congo's story, but Congo's story you could have replaced and honestly taken any other example that you wish about Palestine, about Vietnam, about Korea, about Mexico, to see really that Congo's story is really part of a larger story. So, really, to honor Americans' roots in the US, we must go beyond profit driven foreign policy, right? And really stand for what justice is or what justice means. And justice means collaboration, justice means partnership, but justice also means empathy. So, until that shift happens, really, whether it was going to be Kamala in power or Trump in power, Democrats or Republican, the Congo struggle would have remained the same. I believe that person. That's my personal opinion, right? That the Congo and indeed the world really deserve more than just the old, uh, 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 same U.S. policies. And when we talk about justice, not that's not the justice that would have been given to the Congolese people. That's also justice that women deserves, that workers deserve, that people, regardless of their gender, their race, or sexual orientation, political affiliation, that they deserve, right? So it's really important now that I'm going to the immigration, I'm gonna land there. What's next? What's next? Because we do talk or speak to the African diaspora, to the Congolese diaspora living here in the US, in Europe, and even to Congolese people in the Congo. We're speaking to other African communities who have been here on US international student visa, on asylum seekers. So really, with Donald Trump set to assume the US presidency on January 20th, 2025, it's really important for us, for our communities, for those communities that I just mentioned, to take those very, very important steps. If you're international students, and I'm not even exaggerating, right? If you're international students or you know someone who's international student, ask them to go right now and renew their visa. Go back to the country, renew the visa, come back. Because you don't know what the policy will be for the next 4 years. We've seen people with green cards being prevented to enter under Trump because they were coming from certain countries. We have seen African countries, shithole countries like he called them, being prevented to even get visa. We've seen insane amount of money asked as a deposit for those African immigrants to come legally in the U.S. So your visa is going to expire soon in the next year or two. Go back, ask for another one. Say that your passport got lost. I don't know. Do anything so that you can renew your visa, so that you can survive for the next 4 years and live here in the U.S. with peace of mind. If you are an asylum seeker, like I once was, right? These are the steps that you need to take right now. And I'm not even joking. Really, it's very important for you all to do that. So if you're eligible to apply for your initial work permit, even if you don't plan to work, apply. A work permit serves as a government ID, allowing you to travel domestically, to have access to a driver license. Really depends on what state you are, and social security number. Apply. Don't wait. Don't wait after January 20th. Don't wait, because you can apply if your asylum application has been pending for 150 days, and it's free for first-time applicants. So do apply. Renew your work permits if expiring before 2028. It's possible. If you have a work permit expiring before 2028, you can go and you should go right now and renew it now. Because currently, the new permits are issues like every 5 years. But this could change. We never know. And I'm really speaking from the lens of uncertainty. We don't know what could happen. So renewing now will give you or might give you a high chance of receiving a 5 year permit. Who knows? Consider temporary protected status depending where you're from, right? And I know with Friends of the Congo, with other folks in the DMV area, we have been really advocating hard, pushing hard for like almost over a year for the TPS for Congo, right? So if you're eligible, apply for TPS as well as asylum, because the temporary protected status really offers a temporary protection from deportation for individual from specific countries affected by crises such as Afghanistan, Ethiopia, and Haiti, and even Palestine right now, or Lebanon. So really, apply for TPS. Applying for TPS will allow you to work peacefully and remain in the U.S. even if your asylum is being denied. So, like I mentioned, the international student, if you're international student, so if eligible, and you are not part of that immigration options, explore those, right? Consider to apply for other immigration status. Why not? U visa for crime victims. You have been a victim for a crime in the U.S. You can get a U visa, and I'm not. And again, I'm gonna just put as a disclaimer: we're not offering any legal advice. I'm going to ask you to go and consult a lawyer for guidance. You can always reach out to us. We have a connection of a network of lawyers that we know, and then I'm gonna be working to create a really a guide for our immigrant folks to see really what their options are, right? And I was actually on the phone yesterday with a lawyer. He's a husband of a friend of mine. He's from Haiti, ironically, and I'm from the Congo, and we were discussing about that. So it's really important for people as we are entering into a new phase to understand the option that they have, because really that's the only way that we will be able to survive together. Brother Tariq said earlier that we need to listen to each other. We need to work with each other. And I'm going to add to that that we need to empathize with one another as well. So we understand the frustration, we understand the uncertainty, the anxiety. But guess what? We have been resilient for all these years, right? We have resisted, we have organized, we have resisted. Why should we stop right now? So it was a long show today, but I thought that was worth it to bring it to you guys and discuss with interesting folks, smart, and move folks that have been literally understanding the U.S. better than me. And I brought those folks to you to for you to understand why things get to the point that we are today. And for me, it was also to bring you informations of what's next, right? And you're gonna hear that from many people. We need to continue to organize, and organize. So, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be again. It's been a long time. So, Gaetan, Friends of the Congo, stay tuned for next events and activities that we're gonna have. Check out our Instagram accounts. Check out our YouTube accounts. Check out our Twitter or X account, and just get plugged in. Free Congo now, today, and forever. Peace, guys.